Angus Blair is Head of Corporate Development at Beltone Financial. He's also the founder of the Signet Institute, which produces research on the Middle East and North Africa. He joins us on the line now from Cairo. Angus, good to talk to you. We'll get to the political challenges in just a moment. But can you start by describing to us the huge economic challenges facing Egypt right now, given the way tourism has been suffering, given the way the interim government has been eating into the foreign exchange reserves, and given the way industrial production has been hit by these strikes?
Well, clearly, your reporters regularly report on this all through the year. Economic growth has suffered, growth just over 1% now year on year. There's been a slight improvement over the last quarter with some private sector investment, but it's quite limited. Tourism numbers have improved each month marginally, incrementally, but still down over the last year, so far about 40% off last year's numbers. At the moment, as you mentioned, foreign exchange reserves are coming down quite sharply, around $2 billion off in the last month, and upsetting confidence still further in the marketplace with domestic and regional and global investors. Whatever government is going to come in is going to face quite a number of problems, and the first being really trying to boost economic growth to provide as many new jobs as possible, because clearly the economic growth that we're having at the moment doesn't even cover the growth in population.
And the Muslim Brotherhood is expected to win the biggest share of seats, isn't it, Angus? What might the implications be then for business and foreign investment and indeed economic growth?
Well, it depends, obviously, if they do form the government. Really, there's really no clear indication as to how much they would get in Parliament. An enormous diversity in terms of views as to how much the Muslim Brotherhood might get in Parliament. They have a pro-business approach. Many of them are professionals, whether they're doctors or even or businessmen, for example. But the issue is, I think that, as I said, whoever comes in to government is going to have a very tough problem. There are a variety of issues they're going to have to deal with. To follow on from my last question here, the Muslim Brotherhood, if they do form the government, have to also tackle the budget deficit, which is still very high, and maybe about 12% of so far this year of GDP, and having to also fund the continuing trade deficit. So the issue is, I don't think investors in the short term would be too worried, assuming that you have a decent government that's pro-business. The issue is what will come later in terms of other policies that might harm general sentiment, even within Egypt, which is most important, of course, going forward in terms of the private sector.
I mean, aside from the elections, or I should say in the backdrop of all these political developments, are these ongoing simmering tensions between the military council and the protesters, and the fact that the military is set to claim special powers, which would essentially mean that they go over and above the parliament. They don't need to answer to anyone. How could that impact? What does that mean for political risk, if you like, if you're a foreign investor looking at Egypt right now?
Well, the issue is, again, like anywhere, even if you're an investor, but also more importantly, if you're a citizen in Egypt, because you want some kind of stability. But the issue is having it on the terms of the general citizens. Now, clearly, you've seen and you've reported on the protests, but they seem to have died away. There's hardly anyone in Tahrir. Most people are off voting. The issue going forward is the role that the military in total will take. They had their own coup in 1952 and have remained generally in charge through a variety of presidents. They do seem to want to step back. But the issue which you highlight is very important, and it's the role and the accountability of the military going forward. And there's a great number of Egyptians that do want to hold the military accountable for all actions. And I think that even in the short term, even if it's not an issue, it will come back. And that will probably happen after the presidential elections next summer. But it's a very key issue, probably a little bit too long to go into an interview today. It's something we'll probably have to come back to next year. But it's a very vital issue that you've mentioned, and highly political here, as you've seen through the process.